You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm MEZ, and I'm here with my lovely co-host Ryan, and you're listening to Season 4 of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast, the podcast in which Ryan still is the expert on Warhammer 40K, and I still am the noob trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. I don't know why I'm still a noob, by the way. I would actually call myself an intermediate at this point, Ryan. Though I'm rusty, though, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, maybe at the end of last season you might have been. The start of this one, you went right back down.
Oh, for God's sakes. I have had a long summer. We talked about this last episode as well.
Yeah.
But that's
We
fine. I'm
were
getting
away
back
for a
into my
while.
ways. Yeah, but it's fine. We're back. And yeah, Ryan, let's get into it. So, would you start us off?
Well, again, like we have a gimmick every season, and in this season, I am challenging MEZ to bullshit and make up a definition, or tell us the definition if he actually knows, of a particular phrase or word that's going to turn up in that day's episode. So last week it was the Throne Mechanicus, and that went horribly wrong. And
No, I actually think
MEZ,
mine was good. I'm gonna say here.
it was
Ryan, I
good,
think
it just
mine was
wasn't
good.
accurate.
That's true, but it was still good. I think I was close. I wasn't.
But
fine.
today's word for you, MEZ, is the word rubric. Tell us what the rubric is.
So it's a bone inside of your body. It's located like right above here with your like close to your shoulders. You know, it's no,
Like
I'm
next
kidding.
to your clavicle.
Yes, exactly. Your epidermis is showing. You know. If anybody knows that reference, shout out.
Classic Simpsons.
But not what a rubric should say.
Rubric.
Why? I'm getting like immediately with my bullshit mind. Like I get like a Rubik's cubes, but it's not that.
It's not that.
I feel like since it's Warhammer, it has to do something with war. You know,
Perfectly reasonable.
is it a weapon? Some kind of weapon or armor
No.
or anything?
It is not a type of weapon.
Okay.
I'll give you a hint. It's not a physical object.
Okay. Then I must say I'm lost. It's not a physical object, hence it can be literally anything. Like,
That's fair. Fair
know.
point. Fair thing to point out, though. It's not just rubric. It's the rubric.
The rubric.
Yes.
Oh. Well, now I'm intrigued. But
Yeah.
I'm still clueless.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, would you like to get into it then?
Yes.
All right. So that's going to turn up later on in our episode. That's a special tool we'll use later.
Yeah, we're gonna have to edit like a little thing and like a little light bulb above my head when you mention it, and I know what it is later on in the episode. Like, oh my god, I know what it is.
Yeah. All right. So today we will be discussing the Thousand Sons. Of course, we did discuss their storyline in season 3 when we were talking about Magnus. But
Yes.
we're going to take this opportunity to talk specifically about like a major character from that legion and some kind of extra storylines that are interesting but didn't necessarily fall into last season.
Yeah.
So we're just going to expand on it a little bit, you know? And
Yeah.
this is all with the purpose of bringing us up to like a point where we could discuss the modern day properly. Without, you know, being lost. Because obviously next season we're wanting to get up to some modern day stuff. So that's what we have in mind at the moment.
Yeah.
So we are going to begin with a story from the Great Crusades, right? This is shortly before the heresy kind of kicks off.
Yeah.
So this whole story takes place on a planet called Morning Star, right? And interestingly, this is the world where Magnus gained the title the Crimson King.
Yep.
Yeah. So This world is one of the few that survived the Age of Strife, so humanity's been here for God knows how long. And the point we're looking at this world, it is in the middle of like a mass upheaval, right? This planet has this weird thing where every, God knows how many thousands of years, the planet's magnetic poles switch. Which is actually a thing that scientifically can happen, by the way, right? But when this happens, it causes loads of like geographical instability. So volcanoes start going off all over the place, and the environment all just goes to hell. So the whole planet basically tries to tear itself apart for a while, and then will gradually restabilize after the event has occurred. But in the run up to it, there's no way a human's surviving living on this planet, right? It's just not going to happen.
No.
So, since this is the case, and humanity will be wiped off this planet if left to their own devices, the Emperor of Mankind sees fit to send two of his sons and their sons in kind to go evacuate the populace. Perfectly reasonable stuff. Yeah. The two sons in question that he sends are Magnus the Red and Perturabo. And obviously they have their legions with them. Thousand Sons, Iron Warriors.
Yep.
Yeah. And the two of them and their legions all work together as best they can to save as many people as possible. But obviously with all the kind of magnetic storms and all the kind of geographical nonsense going on, it's very difficult. For example, because it's a magnetic polarity swap on the planet, it causes loads of issues with void ships landing and taking off. So trying to actually get people off the planet is quite difficult. But also you've got all like the environmental hazards, like storms and stuff going on, which make it even harder beyond that. And the really fun part is that there was also a cult that popped up on this planet around this time, called the Cult of Shaitan, that believed that the populace had to die to be saved. They were like a death cult.
Okay.
Yeah, so they didn't want anyone getting evacuated. They wanted everyone to stay and die. So that's fun.
They sound lovely.
Delightful people, honestly. Delightful people. Truly, truly delightful. But during the time that we were looking at this world, we get to see how close Magnus and Perturabo actually are. So I mentioned it before, but I'll explain it properly now. There is a scene in this story where Magnus and Perturabo are kind of alone together in Perturabo's workshop, and he shows him that he's made him a couple of things that he's asked for. Yeah. And one of them is a replica of the Antikytherian mechanism. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before.
It doesn't ring a bell.
I think we mentioned it in passing, possibly in the Perturabo episode. There's like a Greek island called Antikythera. Like, actually, this is a real thing, right?
Yeah, that rings a bell. We talked about this last episode.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
well,
sorry, last season. Last season.
Yeah, aye. So, for anyone that isn't aware, there is like a Greek island called Antikythera, and a bunch of sponge divers a very long time ago found a ton of like brass statues and relics and stuff under the water, and it seems like it was just a ship had crashed into like the rocks at this island and sank, and all its cargo kind of spilled. So these sponge divers found all these ancient statues and things a long time later. And amongst it, there was an object called the Antikytherian mechanism. That's what we refer to it as. It seems like it was some kind of like mechanical calendar nowadays, but we're not entirely sure exactly what its purpose is. But within the world of 40k, apparently it was a special device that allowed you to literally see the warp. Right?
So is this the rubrics?
No, it is not.
Damn it. I thought it was...
Yeah. So, Perturabo has made a perfect replica of that device for Magnus at his request. Because Perturabo is an excellent craftsman. He can do basically anything. So he's made him this. And he shows it to his brother, and Magnus is delighted with it. He's so pleased by it, how perfect it is. And he makes a point of like expressing how perfect it is to his brother. You know, really, really praising him on his skill. And then Perturabo, as a good brother would, kind of goes on a little spiel reminding Magnus about their father's warnings and how dangerous it is to stray too close to the warp and things like that.
Yeah.
And he then continues to smash the device purely as a warning to Magnus. But it kind of shows they actually are really good brothers, and Porter Abel really did care about Magnus. He didn't want him getting in trouble. He didn't want anything bad happening to him, even through his own curiosity. But that's just one small part of what goes on in the story. It really just stands to show that these two were quite close.
Yeah, they cared for each other.
Yeah, they really did. They really did care about each other. But there's a few other major events that go on in the Morningstar storyline, which are the kind of things we want to talk about. I would say the most important is based around the Lux Ferrum, which is a giant mass conveyor ship. So it's a void ship, but it's so large that it's never meant to be on a planet. Because it's basically impossible for it to take off. So, the whole point is they're meant to be like giant cargo ships, right? Or giant people carriers. But you're meant to use them by, like, loading them already in space, where weight isn't an issue. And then you're meant to unload them the same way, using, like, smaller ships. But because they didn't have a huge number of ships, and they didn't have a way to do multiple takeoffs to ferry people onto this thing, because they kind of had a deadline for getting people off this planet. They had the Lux Ferrum landed on the planet, and they had these, like, essentially tow ships that they would attach to it to help drag it off the ground, right? And this was the plan. So they loaded up a vast majority of the world's population onto this giant ship. And obviously everyone's fighting to get on board, but not everyone can. So they have guards, all like legionnaires acting as guards, all around the loading area to keep everyone back. And the ship begins its takeoff. So it's firing its engines, and all these tow ships are helping to pull it up as well. And it's around this point that some of the legionnaires that are guarding start to, like, pick up that something's not quite right in the crowd. There's like a tension in the air that feels wrong. Specifically, some of the Thousand Sons start to sense some kind of malicious intent. Because they are, a lot of them are quite psychic.
Yeah, Magnus's sons.
Yeah, Ahriman in particular, his second in command, is one of the ones that's like, shit's about to go down here. And all of a sudden, there is, like, fighter ships in the sky taking out the like, towing ships that are helping this thing get off the ground. And then people like rioters, basically, from the cult of Shaitan, burst out in the crowd and start killing people and firing rockets up at the Lux Ferrum and stuff like that. Like, they are not letting anyone get off this planet. Now,
that's a bad day.
Yeah. But they're able to hold them off long enough that the ship manages to almost get to, like, you know, a reasonable height for it to leave. But at the last minute, they destroy the last of the couple of the towing ships, and it begins to fall. Obviously, it's firing its own engines at, like, max burn. But if this thing hits the ground, everyone on it dies. Like,
that's a big impact. A big fall.
Like, no one's getting out of that.
Nope.
Now, the Thousand Sons are severely hindered in this kind of fight that breaks out because they are under orders to never use their powers in front of anyone. So they're fighting as normal legionnaires, right?
Yeah.
Because this is after the emperors slapped the back of their hands and went, no more magic. So they're all, like, ordered under Magnus's rule. No one uses your powers in front of anyone that's not of our legion. They will not understand, no matter what. But Morningstar is kind of a point where they have to use their powers. Because Magnus, for example, uses his to shield a carrier ship that picks him up at one point from the weather. Things like that. But it's at this point where the Lux Ferrum starts to gradually fall back to Earth because its own engines can't lift it out of the gravity, that Magnus realizes Like, it doesn't matter if people find out that he has magical powers or that he's still using them if he can't do his job. Like, that's the trade-off. It's either not be able to save people and protect his people and stuff like that, not be able to serve the Imperium properly, or be tried as a sorcerer. And he accepts that deal, basically. So he charges out like directly under the Lux Ferrum. And he has a bunch of his sons with him. I believe there's like 23 or 24 of them that are all with him. And he begins to use his powers to lift the ship, to force the ship back upwards.
What?
Not to actually lift it, but to gradually slow its descent. Right? He's not trying to like send it away. He's trying to stop it from, exploding on impact.
Damage control, essentially.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. Right? He's like, I can't lift the thing, but I can sure as hell try and slow it down.
Yeah. Spider-Man in the, with the web where he holds the trains, right?
That essentially that kind of concept, yeah. So he starts kind of trying to force it back up, and then all of his sons that he brought with him make ritual circles around him. They separate into circles of sons, gradually expanding in number around him, and all feed their power into him. And it's not just like their power being added, it's also the burden of what they're trying to do is shared among them all as well. They're all linked through their powers for this, trying to lift this ship. And it's not decelerating, it's not slowing down, it's just falling... it's just picking up speed as it falls slower. They're not actually able to stop it. And it's like... The sheer amount of force they're putting out is actually forcing a crater in the ground under them. They're getting forced into the ground rather than lifting the ship. Yeah. And a good way to think about a magical power in 40k is like a fire, right? So... Whereas if you were to look at Magnus in this light, you would see like this untamable blazing wildfire. And all of his sons would essentially just be a spark in comparison, right? Yeah. They are nothing compared to him. And it's as Magnus is realizing that there's no more he can put into this, and his sons are now suffering from this kind of like backlash of using so much power, that he starts to kind of lose hope a little bit. And in that kind of moment of darkness, he sees a flame that he hadn't seen before. Right? He had never realized this was there. And he calls out to them. It's his favored son, Ahriman, who he has never realized, he's never seen the actual power that was within Ahriman until right now. He is so far beyond any of the rest of his sons. And he asks him for help. So, out of nowhere, we have a Primarch actually asking one of his kids to help him. And Ahriman lays his hand on Magnus and floods all of his power, to add it to the ritual, and directly shares the burden of the spell they're casting with Magnus.
Damn.
Yeah, because they're all in agony at this point from what they're doing. The sheer overexertion it is horrendous. But with the addition of the small amount of power that Ahriman actually had in comparison to Magnus, they are able to slow the ship enough that they can descend it gradually rather than having it accelerating an impact. And they are able to safely lay it on the ground over them. Because you gotta remember, they're all in a crater now that they've built from doing this.
Yeah, it pushed them way down in the ground.
Yeah, so it just lays on the ground over them, nice and safe. And
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, there's a really good quote about it. Something that Magnus says when he's thinking about it, how minuscule Ahriman's power was compared to his own. But his comment is something like, even a pebble can start a landslide. And you're like, that's such a good quote.
It really is.
It's like a one man against the world kind of quote. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's after they manage to land it, obviously, there's a moment where Magnus starts to lose consciousness, so his vision starts to go black, and he hears Ahriman point out that actually only 2 of his sons are still alive. The rest of them have like burned away to dust inside their armor.
Bruh.
Yeah, the sheer backlash of Magnus's, like, of the spell they were casting, and them sharing some of Magnus's power for that amount of time, like, disintegrated them in their armor. The only ones that survived were Ahriman and a man called Phocis Takar.
Okay.
Yeah, they were the only survivors. And he kind of, like, he hears Ahriman pointing this out as he, like, passes out. But as he's, like, falling, basically, he can see through his, like, kind of darkened, hazy vision, some giant in iron and black and yellow armor marching towards him. And then he doesn't actually fall, he's caught, and he just hears Perturabo be like, I've got you, brother. And then Perturabo, like, carries him out of the crater to safety. It's really sweet. I have, let me find this. Here you go. Perturabo carrying Magnus. Like, that's really sweet. 2 of the worst traitors the Imperium's ever seen in a brotherly embrace.
I love that, you know. I love that.
It's really nice.
It's cute.
Yeah.
But hey, yo, respect Ahriman, you know?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to see what Ahriman looks like?
Yeah, go on.
So here's a couple of pictures of him side by side. This is Ahriman.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the first captain, essentially. He's Magnus' second in command. I have one more as well that I like. This is him, like, using his powers.
Oh, God.
Yeah, he's a bit of a tank.
Really, though? Like,
Yeah,
he could be a
we don't
Primarch
fuck
himself.
Ahriman.
Oh, he can't, but, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Oh, yeah, powerful. But keep in mind, he is basically, like, 1/100th of Magnus's power, maybe. Like, he is nothing compared to Magnus at this point.
Yeah, I was about to say he's not Primarch. He could be he could be at Magnus's level when Magnus was a baby in his little cryopod.
Honestly, he might not even be that powerful. That's the thing. He is considered like a master sorcerer at this stage, and like he's basically nothing compared to Magnus. Like, if you're talking purely in terms of sorcery, he's not fit to clean Magnus's boots. Like,
Nah.
that's the sheer difference in their powers. But he's still got more power than most other sorcerers.
Yeah.
Interestingly, you know, at this day and age, how, like, sorcery is like a no-go. There is one other legion that has sorcerers that can, like, match Ahriman's level. Can you guess what legion it is? It's really funny.
No, I'm not too sure.
It's the Space Wolves.
The Space Wolves?
Yeah, you know the guys that hate magic?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have, like, some of the most powerful sorcerers in the galaxy in their legion.
Well, you know what, Ryan? I would also say, what about the orcs? They can use magical powers. They just don't know it.
Well, no, some of them do know it. They have, like, crazy orc shamans.
Yeah, but, they might be, that might
That's
be
a fair
somebody
point, yeah. But I'm purely talking at, like, the 30k mark when we're, like, pre-heresy and stuff. If Ahriman is considered to be, like, a master sorcerer in his legion, interestingly enough, that, like, one of the main legions that has people that can match them are the Space Wolves, because they have rune priests that are basically just, like, Viking magical shamans. And there is a point in one of the early Thousand Suns books, like, from the Heresy era, where Ahriman is, like, projected his soul into the warp to do some exploring, and he makes a mistake and draws the attention of these, like, malicious warp creatures that start eating his soul. And just out of nowhere, this big, like, glowing fucking spirit wolf thing comes and saves the day. And he's like, who the fuck are you? And then, like, the next day, he meets a Space Wolves rune priest who is, like, set onto the same mission as him that he hadn't met yet. It was him that sensed what was going on and was just like, oh yeah, I'll sort this out. Yeets his spirit in to save Ahriman's life.
And his name is John Cena Wolf. I don't know.
It was probably like Ivor or something. They're not very creative with their naming.
No.
Hilarious though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lucky.
I don't. I've just reminded myself of this. Really, I was reading one of the Space Wolves books the other day, and there's a really funny bit in it where. So the whole point is that they're on this big desert world, right? Mm-hmm. And there's like a small squad of Space Wolves that are fighting there, and one of them goes off on his own into this desert to look for something. I can't remember exactly what. This was like 3 books ago for me now. But he ends up, like, he gets into, like, these ruins, and he finds, among fighting, he finds reinforcements by accident, and they're, like, Fenrisian human guardsmen. And then he's like, how the fuck did you end up here? But he basically just recruits them and takes them back with him, and when he gets back to, like, his actual squad, they're all like... That dude went into a desert and found our soldiers. If we gave him longer, he'd probably find Russ. That is brilliant. I love that. Anyway, totally irrelevant though. I apologize. I just reminded myself of it, and it was very funny. So, moving forward, there is another major point from Morningstar. I may as well round out the point of the whole Morningstar thing. So. The actual main purpose of the whole story is the cult of Shaitan. There's a backstory to them. And it's that Magnus finds this, like, long-buried colony ship. And it's the ship that initially put humanity on this world, like, centuries ago. Yeah. And he finds out that actually the colonists were possessed by a demon, or a Gestalt entity, called Shaitan. And that's what's running the cult now. It's just possessing humans. So he ends up capturing the demon Gestalt entity, whatever you want to call it, in the Book of Magnus. He basically just, like, kidnaps it into his book. And then they leave, because the planet's about to fall apart, basically. And when they get back into orbit, everyone kind of knows that it was, like, a demon or whatever was possessing them. What they don't know is that Magnus has it with him. Oh. And Part Rabo and, like, basically everyone is like, we can't leave this planet as it is because that demon thing is there. We need to get rid of it. That's our job. So they just nuke the planet into nothing. They just exterminate the whole planet. And then turn all of their ship's guns on the evacuation ship that they got off the planet. Because none of the planet's populace can be allowed to leave in case any of them are still possessed. Yeah. So it was all pointless.
Well, great.
Fun times.
That sucks.
Yeah. Now, right, we're gonna move on from the Morningstar thing. It was a really good bit to tell you about.
Yeah, I liked it.
Oh yeah, but we're gonna, like, get in a bit of a Legion based kind of origin to end kind of thing now. So
okay.
We're going to be rolling over a lot of the stuff we mentioned in the previous season, but, like, just to kind of, in case it's anyone's first time here. So a bit of a reminder just to build the storyline for you. So
also a reminder, if this is your first time listening to this is season 4. You have a lot of catching up to do.
Yes, that's very true. I don't know why you'd start with season 4, but why not?
I don't know. The algorithm feeds what it want to feed, Ryan, you know?
That's very true. No one knows what the algorithm is doing. Nope. Absolute fact. So, when the Thousand Suns were first created, as you may remember, they suffered from mass mutations, right? The flesh change, they called it. And they would basically just take on, gradually take on monstrous bestial forms. Like that. I don't think I showed you this last time. It's pretty banging. But this is the kind of stuff they would turn into. So you can see why it was such a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I reckon just make some special power armor for that and send it in. It'll be fine. Like, that's what the Blood Angels do. When their people turn, like, feral like Sanguinius, they basically just send them back in and just keep their own troops away from them. Like, yeah, they'll die, but they'll kill 4 million of the enemy first. But yeah, we should have done that with him. It would have been a great idea. Just use them like a suicide bomb. Just launch, drop pod them straight into the enemy's roof and just see what happens.
It's like, it's not ethical, but it's like effective.
Yeah.
It's really, yeah. That's a lot of damage.
Yeah. So imagine you're like some rebellious governor and you're sitting with your council in your office telling them your plans, and then a drop pod flies through the ceiling and you're like, ah, shit. They just crushed Dave, who was my general, and two, I'm going to get murdered by space marines, and then the bolts blow and the door flies off, and then that thing runs out. You're like, God, I wish it was a space marine as you try to claw through a window. If only it was a goddamn space marine, it'd be faster. Fun times. So yeah, this is what they were turning into, which is a big issue, obviously. And the Emperor and the Selenite gene rights obviously thought it was a genetic issue and tried to solve it. But it never came to anything. They never found a way to cure it. Eventually, I believe it was Malkador the Sigillite that suggested the only way to fix it may be to reunite them with Magnus. Yeah. It might be some kind of I don't know, soul-based resonance is causing it. It's like not having him around is causing a destabilization of the genetics, is what he was figuring. Obviously, when they did bring Magnus back, there was some relief from the mutation, but it wasn't entirely cured, and two, it wasn't really because Magnus was back, it was because Magnus taught them to control their powers properly.
Okay, yeah.
So, the problem seemed to be solved as far as the Imperium was concerned, but the Thousand Sons still knew. It did pop up once in a while. It's just that they kind of got better at seeing the signs beforehand and doing things about it before you had that to deal with. It's once one arm is a tentacle, you just bolter the guy's head rather than waiting for that. That was basically the method. Interestingly, prior to Magnus's return, obviously the legions were all recruited from Terra initially. And of that first group, we actually had a young Azek Ahriman and his brother, Ormuzd? Anyway, two of them were recruited at the same time, and both became legionnaires together. But unfortunately, Osmod did actually suffer from the mutation and had to be killed. So it set who Ahriman was, because one, he loved his brother. So much so that the pendant that he wore all the time that they got from their mother, he had it fitted into the shoulder plate of his armor. Which is interesting. But it also kind of set Ahriman to hate mutation more than anything and be dead set on curing it.
Yeah.
So that set who he was, all because of this mutation thing. But that's also why, Ahriman was so dead set on, growing in power. It's why he ended up growing to a stage that he became second to Magnus, was because of what happened to his brother. Which is interesting. It's always good to get a bit of an origin story for these people, for their motivations.
Yeah, I was about to say.
So, our story then moves forward in the usual manner with a Great Crusade kicking off and then the gradual fall to chaos, which is pretty standard at this point.
Yeah.
But it's at the fall to chaos that things take a real turn for this legion. So, as you'll remember, the first kind of major turn in the story for the Thousand Sons is when Magnus tries to warn the Emperor, blasts apart all the wards, and lets demons into the palace. And then the Emperor obviously sends the Space Wolves to bring him back. Horus gets in the way, changes the orders to a kill order, and then we have the burning of Prospero, where the Space Wolves obviously, burn the planet to the ground, and Russ tries to murder Magnus with his own hands.
Yeah.
And at the very last second, Ahriman completes a ritual that Magnus had told him to carry out, which would basically teleport the entire Legion from Prospero to a world within the Eye of Terror. And this is that world. Oh god. Set up that order wrong.
It's consuming me, Ryan.
Anyway, that's it. That's the one. I don't know why it's like that. We'll just get rid of that now.
Yes.
Hopefully I've not set up any other pictures incorrectly. That was weird.
It's fine. It's
We'll go back to
fine.
looking at Ahriman's handsome faces.
You know, that's not too bad.
Yeah. These ones are fine. I don't know why it's doing that. It's in the right order. Anyway, so, it was the planet of the Sorcerers, which is where they ended up, and it became the new home for their legion. But this point where they got to this planet, where this was their new home, the legion accepted Tzeentch as their new patron at that point, right?
Yes.
And there are some benefits to doing that, especially for this particular legion, because they are a legion of sorcerers, and Tzeentch is the god of magic.
Yeah.
So, obviously, there are some benefits to being his patron if you are a sorcerer. But there is also a downside to the situation for the Thousand Sons, which is being in the Eye of Terror massively exacerbates the flesh change. So a lot of them start succumbing to mutation really quickly. Yeah. So the problem has went from like a 2 to a 10 overnight since being in this place. And it is a serious problem.
And it's accelerating. Like,
yes.
So 2 to 10 to 20 to...
Exactly. It's getting worse and worse and worse. They're losing troops by the day to becoming monsters, basically. Benefit is you don't have to kill them anymore. You can just kind of send them off into the Eye of Terror to let them go do things. Yeah. But this was obviously a pretty dark time for them. They've turned their back on the Imperium. They're stuck away from their home world, which was now being burned by their friends and, cousins, basically. Yeah. And now a bunch of the Legion itself is falling apart.
Yeah.
Now we come to the main event. Around this time, Magnus is obviously busy doing other shit. And Ahriman is the one we're going to be looking at. This guy here, he's our important character, right?
Yes.
With the Legion suffering from these mutations so severely, Ahriman took it upon himself to fix it. Mm-hmm. So he gathered a cabal of the greatest sorcerers that the Legion had, right? Mm-hmm. All of the best got roped together. And he basically proposed to them that they enact this great ritual that he has claimed from the Book of Magnus itself, and it will purify the Legion. It'll cure them of the mutation. But he needs all of the strongest together to do it. So they all agree. This is the plan. And when they were ready, he gathers the conclave, and they begin this ritual. It was known as the Rubric.
Yeah.
Okay? It is this great purifying ritual. And when the ritual is kind of cast, right, the whole planet of the sorcerers is consumed in these like yellow and blue lightning storms. Yeah. And it starts like killing legionnaires. Like the bolts are hitting people and just evaporating them basically. People are just being dropped left, right, and center. So Magnus eventually steps up and puts an end to the ritual. He like anti-magics this shit, right?
Yeah.
For the record, the ritual was so powerful that like demons all across the warp were like, oh. Like it freaked them out. Like they like shy away from it. Yeah, they were like hiding from it because they didn't know what the fuck was going on. That's how powerful this spell was.
Damn.
But in the aftermath of it, after Magnus put an end to it, the spell turned out to have been an incredible success and a devastating failure at the same time.
So I was right the whole time. It is kind of a weapon. In
a sense, yes, but it was never intended to be. When you said that, I was like, I can't say it is, because it's not meant to be.
It depends on how you use it, Ryan. Like a knife, you can use it for butter, you can use it for bad stuff.
Or a hammer is a good example.
A hammer is... Exactly.
Realistically, anything can both be practical and a weapon. Like, I can hit someone with a chair. Like...
Yes.
I saw a guy get his nose broken by a door once. Like, a dude just slammed the door in his face because he was being a dick. Like, even a door can be a weapon, man.
I mean, right, you can use a brick to build a house, or, you know,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, I don't want to, trigger the the algorithm again to ban us for saying bad stuff.
It's probably going to happen anyway.
We're gonna build houses with those bricks.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
We could have a nice brick fight.
Yes.
We're consenting adults. We can do that.
No, it's Lego bricks, right, Ryan?
Yeah. Somehow that sounds more dangerous than actual bricks.
Bro, if you step on
Lego
one of
bricks
those,
are
it's a
deadly.
rip. If you step on it, it's a rip.
Right, back to the terrible ritual. So, so on the plus side, right, the small amount of the Legion, which were already, like, pretty good sorcerers that were, like, already, worth noticing as sorcerers or were really powerful, found that their powers were greatly multiplied. They were massively more powerful now.
Oh.
But the vast majority of the Legion had been, their armor had been magically sealed, so it was, like, airtight. And their bodies had been reduced to dust inside their armor, and their souls were trapped inside, animating the armor. So they were reduced to, like, just a soul in a suit of armor as, like, an automaton, without being able to think for themselves or anything.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, the vast majority of the Legion are just automatons now, without any personality. Yes.
Whoever gets the fate of automaton versus getting more powerful, is that a random selection, or is it like, the powerful getting more powerful now, and the ones who's not, kept up is like...
It was as a rule, it was basically those that were already powerful became more powerful.
Okay,
those
so
that were barely sorcerers or not sorcerers at all were all turned into automatons. So it is the vast majority that are now just a suit of armor with dust inside.
Yeah, with the elite being stronger. I was just wondering if it's like, a selection like Thanos, like you get it, you don't, blah, 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 blah. Right?
No, it was very much like the powerful become more powerful, the weak turn into automatons.
It's like real life.
Yeah.
Economy-wise, but...
most things-wise, to be honest with you.
Yeah, let's not go into politics, though, but yeah.
Yeah. So, obviously, if you look at it at this point, Ahriman has reduced Magnus's legion of academics and scholars and poets and everything like that to mindless automatons. But in doing so, he has made them immune to mutation. Just saying.
So it was kind of like a double-edged sword.
It very much was, yes. The problem is that the age facing you was much worse than the other one.
Is it like... What's that meme that I failed successfully,
Yes, task failed successfully.
Task failed successfully.
Yeah. But for what they had done, Ahriman and his cabal were all exiled by Magnus. They were they were literally magically banned from the planet of the sorcerers. They physically cannot return there. And they were banished from the Legion. So... this was the event that actually led Magnus to mimic Horus and, like, set his vow that he would see the galaxy burn.
Yeah.
This is what his favored son was the one that made him turn his back on the galaxy as a whole. Which is pretty harsh. Interestingly, even in the modern day, Magnus still loves Ahriman, even though Ahriman just keeps fucking up more and more. But Magnus still loves him. He kind of just wants everything back to normal. So since that day, the vast majority of the Legion have been made up of what are referred to as rubric marines, or the rubricae. I've got a picture of them here. So that is a rubric marine. Which is quite cool. Yeah. But the thing is, they can only be given orders psychically. So... The Legion is vastly made up of these autonomous Marines and a handful of the still living Marines who basically act as, like, generals for them by psychically giving the squads commands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is interesting. And, you know, it's funny, if you communicate with one of these using, like, your psychic mind powers, right, all you hear from them is, like, the sound of dust falling.
No.
Just quite harsh.
It really is.
Yeah. But now we come to the modern day, the 40th millennia, kind of...
Oh, God, you right?
Yeah, choking on nothing. So now we come to the 40th millennia, the kind of the modern day kind of timeline, right? Actual 40k.
Yes.
And in this era, since being banished, the Thousand Sons are kind of split into two groups, right? There is those still loyal to Magnus, who are still with their father on the planet of the Sorcerers, furthering his goals. And the rest are basically in scattered war bands. Because you got to remember, you know, like the Black Legion and all that stuff, where Abaddon reunited a bunch of the other kind of traitorous legionnaires, regardless of legion, under his banner.
Yeah.
All those, like, small groups of different legionnaires and stuff that he pieced together were all individual war bands that had been going around the Eye of Terror fighting for whatever they felt like at the time. So, in this case, the Thousand Sons that aren't with Magnus, the vast majority of them are all split up into different war bands, just doing whatever they think is right at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hidden away, you know, long forgotten and lost even to himself, sits Alzek Ahriman, now part of a small band of, like, Chaos Marauders. He has completely foregone using any magical powers except for, like, the minorest things, and has totally forgotten, like, who he is and who he was, having taken up the alias Horkos. So he's went from being this, like, absolute tank legionnaire who was, like, a master sorcerer and all that stuff, to, like, taking up this name Horkos as an exile, and he just, like, is meek and kind of afraid of everything and gets beaten by the other members of the crew all the time and stuff like that, and they all think he's just useless and worthless and threaten to kill him all the time and stuff like that, as he like whimpers in a cell in the bottom of their ship.
Damn.
That's who Ahriman ends up as, this little meek little weirdo called Horkos. But
That's so sad.
yeah, but all over the Imperium, all over the entire galaxy, those who look into the warp, they hear rumors. They see, like, omens of something coming. A storm is brewing. They hear whispers from this storm. And many know this storm is coming. But to those who take the risk and listen closely to the whispers, they hear a long-forgotten warning. Ahriman.
Okay.
So this is a big deal, because the warp obviously is not set with time, right? So you do see omens of things that are going to come. And in the 40th millennia, there is a point where everyone knows something big is coming, but they don't know what. But when they listen, the warp simply whispers back, Ahriman. And that is a name that is long forgotten to history. But in the 40th millennia, Horkos does realize who he is and return to his greatness as Ahriman, and takes back control of a large section of his legion. He goes back to being the first captain, just not under Magnus. He reunites a lot of the Thousand Sons. But that is an entire storyline that we will get to in the next season, probably, maybe. Could be. Also, I'll show you what Ahriman looks like nowadays, right? So, just so you remember, this is Ahriman back at, like, the 30th millennia.
Yeah.
This is him now.
Oh, God.
It's an absolute beast.
Yes.
Love this guy.
I like the artwork, by the way.
It's really good. My favourite one has to be the Perturabo and Magnus. Although, I found this on Reddit, but the guy's account the person's account has been deleted. Although, that is the name of the person who wrote it right at the bottom. I do have the name, I just have no idea how you pronounce it. It's like Rathiel or something like that. It's a lot of weird like letters to have together. But I will put a link to anything I can find of theirs in the description so that people can find it if they want to. Because that is truly incredible. Yeah. But I think that's enough that we'd be able to start talking about the Thousand Sons in the modern day. So would you like to round us out?
Sure thing, Ryan. Well, it's been me, MEZ, and Ryan, and we thank you for listening to this episode of Iterators of the Imperium podcast, season 4. I still can't get over. We made it this far.
I know.
But we will see you or hear you or do stuff.
Smell you.
In the next smell you. I'll smell
Taste
you
you.
later. Next week. Take care and peace.
Bye.